Hello everybody and welcome to this week's video. Now this week obviously everything has changed. It's going to be a wildlife video this week, but it's a wildlife video with a difference. What I thought I would do is show you the species and the animals and the critters that I'm going to be trying to take images of through the spring and into the early summer. Now I'd got all this video planned obviously, and then the coronavirus hit, and I'm really not sure what we're going to be allowed to do and not to do at the minute. From my own personal point of view, the type of wildlife photography that I do really is putting yourself in isolation, because the type of photography that I do is that I will go to a location where there's nobody else. I don't want other people there, and I'll be stalking wildlife. So if there's anybody else there walking dogs or whatever, then you know you've shot it anyway. You're not going to be able to find the wildlife anyway. I tend to go there early so that again there's not going to be anybody there. Isolated locations. The only difference for me this year at the minute, unless we're told no, you do not drive anywhere, or you do not walk anywhere, or you do not come out of your house, is the fact that I'm going to be sticking really local, which is quite easy for me. And I understand, you know, from other people who watch my channel, then you know that maybe not be as easy. If you live in the middle of London or somewhere, you know you're going to have to drive to get somewhere where there's loads of wildlife where you can take images in an isolated sort of location. My type of wildlife photography generally does not involve going to sort of national nature reserves and sitting in hides with loads of other people and going to car parks, you know, full of other cars. I'll either walk to a woodland, or I'm driving to, you know, a lay-by at the side of the road and then walking into a wood, or walking down to a riverside or a meadow or whatever. So, you know, it is quite self-isolating in a way. But this may be the last video for some time, I'm not sure. But what I was hoping to do is just sort of run you through the sort of species that I'll be trying to take images of over the next sort of 3 or 4 months as we get from spring into early summer, and hopefully give you some tips, A, about the wildlife that's around, and B, you know, why that I'm looking to try and get images at this time of the year. You know, what advantages does this time of the year have over any other? So hopefully you'll find that interesting. Hopefully you'll pick up a few tips. So we'll see how we get on. Right, to make this video easier to follow, I thought I'd split it into 3. So what I'm going to do first is look at birds, then mammals, and then amphibians and reptiles. Now this list I'm going to go through is by no means exhaustive, and what I would say to you is that as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, which I'll put a link up to here, and it's actually quite pertinent to the times we're living in at the minute if you think about it. What I try and do is stick a lot to my local area, because I think, I know my local area, I've lived in it for over 20 years, I know what species that we get and what time of year. I've seen them before and where to see them. So I can't urge you enough to stick a lot to your local area. Yeah, by all means make those trips for something special, but you know, you can be the local expert in your local area. Anyway, why should you photograph birds in spring? Well, I think the biggest thing is that birds, what are they doing at this time of year? They're starting to build nests, pair up, have youngsters. And birds are no different to anybody else. If they're building a nest, they're building it there for a reason. So if you see that you've got, you know, birds nesting in an area, you know, they're there because of something, and generally that they're there because A, they've got something to build the nest out of, and B, they've got a food supply for the youngsters when they're born. So for me in my area, a couple of the species that I'm going to be looking for is probably barn owls, and that's only because I know a couple of areas where I've, you know, sort of close to the house, where I've seen barn owls quite a lot, and I've photographed them in the past, but I've never quite got the images that I wanted. Now, barn owls specifically, if they, you know, nest in a barn, generally there's going to be an area somewhere near that barn where they're going to be hunting for food. Now, favourite areas are obviously meadows with quite long grass, but also things like drainage ditches. You know, the sides of drainage ditches, the grass banks that run along the edge, you often see them coming along there. So, you know, that's that's one of the things to look for as regards barn owls, and that's what I'll be looking for. And another important thing with barn owls is that they can't hunt in the rain. The feathers aren't waterproof, so a good tip really is that if you, in the spring or early summer, get you know where the barn owls nest in, there's a nice meadow in front of it. If you have rain all night, then the barn owl's not going to be able to hunt. If it's got youngsters, it's going to be really desperate to get out and do some hunting. So as soon as that rain stops, it'll be out hunting, and that means that, you know, you can catch them out in the day, which is brilliant. You know, obviously you need light for your camera to work, so that's one of the things to look for. Other things I'm going to be looking for this year: swallows, house martins, sand martins. I've got a couple of sites where I've got sand martin nests, and I've never really, again, not satisfied with the images that I've got. I've not really spent enough time actually, so you know, again, they'll be nesting. They're a species that obviously come over in the summer, in the spring and summer. I generally start to see them in sort of April time. So yeah, that's really all I want to say on birds. That's the sort of thing I'm going to be looking for. I mean, I might have another ill-fated attempt at buzzards again. I don't know. They're sort of my bogey bird, but yeah, that should keep me busy as long as we can still go out. Right, what mammal images will I be trying to get pictures of this spring and early summer? Well, I suppose the obvious one for me where I live is brown hares, the European hare. We do get a lot, and my only problem this year is that we've had so much flooding. I've seen 3 in a field sort of behind my house recently. Now the water's gone down, but I've seen as many as 9 in there. Now it's a really good time. I know the old saying Mad March hare, which refers to hares boxing, and I know most of you all know it's not 2 males fighting, it's females fighting off the attentions of males when they're sort of getting ready to breed, but they're not, you know, don't want that to breed with that particular male. You'll see them boxing, and March and early April is a good time to catch images of that. They will do it through loads more. I mean, I've seen them sort of July, August. You know, if a female comes into season, they'll box and fight and run around and chase each other at most times. But I find March and April are pretty good for a couple of reasons, and that is where I live. There's a lot of arable farming. And you'll find in March specifically that the crops are quite low, so that's when you get to a stage where you can just see the top of a hare when it's lying down in a field, you know, when the crops is about this tall. And obviously if they start chasing round, you'll be able to see it. Once the crops get to this tall or this tall, they'll be going round where the tractor tyres have been, and you won't actually see anything. So March is a really good time. Now what I would suggest is, if you see some hares in a field, your best bet is trying to crawl into a position on the edge of that field and then just set up and wait. You know, just lie down low, flat on the floor, and if they start chasing round, generally they're more interested in chasing a female. She's more interested in keeping out the way, so they can come really close because they're not really concentrating on you're being there. So yeah, March is a good time for hares. That's the sort of thing that I'll be doing. As we get a little bit later into the spring, early summer, I like to take pictures of fox cubs. Now, one of the sites where I take them this year has been underwater, and it was underwater in January, which I don't think, you know, I'm 100% sure there's not going to be any young in there this year. It's too late. I can't see her coming back and using it now. She'll have moved on to somewhere different. But there's another place that I know that there were fox cubs last year, and generally what happens with those, they start to come out probably May, beginning of June time is a good time to look for them. And what you'll find is when again, concentrate on your local area, and what you'll find is when the young are only just coming out of the den, they don't have the same fear that they do as they get older. So I've walked around a corner and literally walked into some, and it's been a sort of bemused, I'm bemused, they're bemused, what are you? situation. So once you know that they're there, you can then find a position to set up. A lot of these things, especially with mammals, it's dependent on wind direction. So if I know where there's some fox cubs and I've seen them out or on a grass banking, I'll try and visit on a day when I know the position I want to photograph them from has the wind coming into my face, so that I'm not getting my scent going onto the den or where the youngsters are. Again, welfare of the wildlife always comes first. And I have to say, things like fox cubs are particularly, I don't want to make this video unpleasant in any way, but fox cubs, I know for a fact, especially in my area, I've heard this from a local, when I found some fox cubs actually, but I didn't tell him that I'd found fox cubs. I was actually going up to a badger set, and I said, have you got anything else in the area? And he said, oh, we sometimes get foxes and stuff. And he basically said to me, oh, the local hunt feed them, you know, they put food out for them. And the reason that they do that, foul, disgusting creatures that they are, and that's the hunt, not the foxes, is that sort of late spring, early summer, what they'll do, if they know they've got foxes or a den with youngsters in a woodland, they'll basically bring the pack of dogs out, send them into the woods so that they can basically rip the youngsters apart and get the taste for the fox and the blood ready for the autumn when they start chasing the adults around and ripping them to bits. So a really important point for me, I would urge you all, if you do find fox cubs, as tempting it is to tell everybody, oh, I found these fox cubs here, and you know, oh yeah, it's great, it's fantastic, they're absolutely gorgeous. Be very, very careful. I have had people, work colleagues who I've known for years, when they've seen my images, say, oh, you know, I'd love to go and see them, can you take me up there? Where is it? Can I go and have a look? I never tell them, and that's simply because you do not know. You might know who they are, but you don't know who they're going to tell, by accident or on purpose, and you don't know who that's going to get back to. So, you know, our wildlife has a hard enough time as it is. Keep that information to yourself. You know, you've earned it, you know, you've done all the work to find out where it is. The last thing you want is it being persecuted in some way due to your actions. So, as well as, and even in your images, make sure there's no landmarks visible, you know, in the background or whatever. Try and make it so that anything like that's cut out so somebody can't guess where it is. I mentioned badgers briefly. Late spring, early summer, the longest days are the best days to take pictures of badgers. And I'll be having a go again this year. They were really elusive last year, and I have no idea why. I've been up to where my particular badger set is loads of occasions on the past. I even walked up once, I think it was like 1:30 or 1 o'clock in the middle of the day, and there was a badger out just wandering around. I hadn't even got my camera with me, but last year they were really, really difficult to see, and I'm not sure whether that's because the fox den was pretty close to it, and I don't know. I mean, this normally coexist quite well together, but didn't get any pictures, so I'm definitely going to have a go with badgers again this year. Why I say sort of longest summer days are the best. Badgers, if they've got an opportunity or, you know, the chance, they will feed at night, which is obviously no good for photography unless you're going to start setting flashes up and things, which again can disturb them, which you don't really want to do. I find the best thing to do is go on the longest days. I may put a few peanuts down. I never put thousands and thousands because I don't want the animals to become dependent on that food source. So it's just a few little bits near and there. You can use peanut butter as well, stuff like that, but it's never thousands of things. It's just a handful, just in a position so I can get in a position to photograph them. And again, very dependent on wind direction. So if you've got a particular area where you want to take pictures from, you know, that's generally, if you've got your back against something with badgers, their eyesight's not brilliant. So I can sometimes sit out in the open with my back against a tree, really quiet, with a camera in front of me, and just sit there and as the sun's starting to go down, they'll come out and I can snap away and get images, and you know, they're not particularly bothered. But if they smell you, they'll be away. So again, yeah, that wind direction is all important. So I think that's probably the main things I'm going to be taking images of this spring and summer as regards mammals. I hope you picked up a few tips there. As I say, I'm doing what's local in my area for a couple of reasons. One, because of the current situation we're in, and I want to stay local, I don't want to be travelling anywhere. But local is your friend, you know it better than anybody else. While you're out walking the dog, you can be looking round you and seeing, what's that, why is that there? I mean, I'll briefly mention deer. I've got roe deer, I see them probably, I see at least 2 or 3 probably every third day when I walk the dog in the morning. I walk her on the same route, about a 3.5 mile route, and I see them hopping from one little woodland to another. You know, that may be something that I do again in the spring, you know, just to get me out of the house. The other thing as well, as regards, you know, sort of isolating yourself, the thing about this time of year, and as we get into the early summer, late spring, is the days are so long that in the summer I can be up at 4 o'clock in the morning and it's light enough to take images. Now nobody's going to be walking the dog at that time. I can be back home and having my breakfast by 6. Been out, had a couple of hours with a camera, not seen anybody. You feel like, you know, the only person on the planet. So again, as long as you can do it safely, that's something that you may be able to do as we get into the late spring, early summer. Right, finally, amphibians and reptiles. I'll start with amphibians, and I think if you're a sort of a beginner to wildlife photography, one of the easiest things to do, and you'll have to be quick because I mean, our pond's got frog spawn in it at the minute. Frogs are a brilliant one to start with. Actually, in this woodland here, I've taken pictures of frogs in drainage ditches. Anywhere where there's any drops of water, you will find that frogs will be in there, and you know, there'll be frog spawn. Early evening's probably a good time to get images of frogs. Again, you need enough light to be able to take the images, but they tend to sort of come to the surface of the pond and start mating, or, you know, moving around a lot more at that time of day rather than the middle of the day. The other tip I'd give you for taking pictures of things like frogs, and it's pertinent to all wildlife, is get on eye level. You know, there's nothing worse than seeing a shot where there's a beautiful pond and there's a frog there and somebody's taken it from standing or kneeling, so you don't have that connection with the animal. If you get down to the level of the water, and obviously if you can do it carefully and if you're mobile enough, get as low down to the surface of the water as you can. Now if the frogs disappear, get into a position that you're comfortable with and just stay there, and they will resurface. Alright, but that's a really important point, and goes through all my wildlife photography. You'll find that if you're on eye level with the creature, the connection between you and the dynamics of the image works much better. Now if you're a little bit more advanced, you can move on to things like snakes. Now the main two that you're liable to see, in fact the only two you're liable to see actually in this country, is the grass snake and the adder. Now if we move on to the grass snake first, I have got images of grass snakes, but it's one I really need to do some work on. I've always had an inkling to get an image of a grass snake on a pond, and again, grass snakes feed on things like frogs, and if you've got a nice dark pool or lake or whatever, you can see them sort of swimming across the surface of the lake. I've never actually got an image of that, so that might be something that I look to do, you know, this spring and summer. You'll also find that grass snakes are the ones that you're more likely to find in your garden. They love compost heaps because that's where they tend to lay their eggs. And like most, you know, like all snakes, they're cold-blooded, so in the early spring they come out of hibernation, they need to warm up before they can move around. So, you know, if you've got a compost heap or any sort of banking, you may find that the snake is there warming up at the start of the day. So south facing, sun comes up, and they'll want to be there to get those first rays of the sun to warm up so that they can then move off and hunt or whatever. So that's grass snakes. My personal favourite is the adder, which is the UK's only venomous snake. I've had a couple of close encounters with them, but again, they tend to favour, I mean, in fact in Nottinghamshire where I live, I think they're classed as extinct. So if I need to take images of them, which is going to be a bit of a bummer this year, because if the lockdown continues, then I'm obviously not going to be able to travel anywhere to take any images. Yeah, they tend to like sort of heathland, moorland, that sort of terrain. You'll be surprised actually at how high up you can find them. We've seen them a lot in Scotland, on Mull and places like that, up on the sides of bankings and in moors and things. Also, old railway embankments, you can often see them on there in the right conditions. I think in Derbyshire that's a favourite place to look for them. Things to do, to think about with adders, again, south facing. What I generally look for in the spring and early summer if I'm going out looking for adders is I want a south facing banking first thing in the morning as the sun comes up, and you really have to walk carefully with all snakes. The reason being is, A, you don't want to tread on them, but number two is they've got a particular organ in their body. I think it's called a Jacobson organ, and what that does, it feels vibration through the ground. So if you go stomping through, in fact if you walk quite lightly, the chances are that snake, before you see it, is going to be gone. And I always find with adders that they tend to be, if they're basking in the sun, they tend to be on a little open area, but there's always a nice gorse or thicket behind them, bracken, that they can just slide straight under and they're gone. So yeah, be really careful and quiet with any sort of snake. And again, it's about getting down low. So if you're going to get down low with a snake, first thing to remember is to have a look what is around your feet and in front of you, because if you're going to start lying down and crawling towards a snake that you've seen, you've got to make sure there's not another one that you're actually going to put your hand on or whatever. Wear boots, because most bites occur in the ankles, and you know, you should be fine. As I say, they're one of my favourites. I've got a story about an adder actually. We were up in Scotland last year, and I was doing some landscape photography, and we were on this, we were looking down into a loch, but there was it was a plantation of trees in front of us, and I just couldn't get the shot that I wanted. But behind us was a rock wall, south facing, really steep. I mean, it was steep, it was a climate job, and I said to Mel, right, I'm just gonna climb up here with tripod on my back and camera, and I'm gonna see if I can get a slightly higher position to get the angle that I wanted down onto this loch to move these trees out of the way. So I'm climbing up, puts my hand on this ledge, lifts myself up, and there's a adder just looking at me, and it's like 3 inches away from my fingers. So I sort of slid my fingers off the edge and retreated. Luckily the snake retreated. It was for me, it was lucky it was a chilled out snake. I've had instances before where I've been 6 feet away from a snake and it's gone ballistic. It's been striking at me and everything. So I was lucky on that occasion. It was a cool snake, and he just said, yeah, I'm fine with that, I'm just gonna make my way away. Now what I did, with my experience of taking pictures of snakes and things for years, we went and did a bit of a walk up to the top of this mountain. Took us about an hour, and we weren't going far, and on the way back I just said to Mel and Leia, I said, well, I'm just going to go and check this ledge again, because I've got a funny feeling that snake will be back and warming up in the sun again. So this time, carefully, I made my way up from the side. Sure enough, it was there, and you know, took some images, which you'll probably be seeing some of those that I took up now. So yeah, that's snakes. There are things like slow worms, which, you know, if you've got an area of wasteland or something and there's like old corrugated sheets have been thrown down and discarded, always check under them. You never know, you might get a slow worm under there. They like to feed on things like ants. Common lizards as well, that's another one to look for. Again, they like heathland. Again, they like to sort of find somewhere in the sun so that they can take the sun in. So you might find them on a south facing bank, or you know, anywhere where there's something slightly different. So if there's a fence post I'm just trying to think where I've seen them before. There's a nature reserve near me, and you tend to find them, there's fencing and there's fence posts, but then the corner posts have got posts coming out to sort of firm up the main post, and you tend to find them on those posts. They'll sit there, the ones that are sort of at an angle up to the main post, if you see what I mean. So yeah, that's amphibians and reptiles. Right, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I know it's been a bit different to normal. I'm hoping to do more sort of species specific wildlife videos. Again, depending on the situation and what happens, you know, everything could be on hold, to be honest. I'm not sure. You just really have to take the advice of the experts and the government, and basically the quicker I think that we do that, you know, the quicker we'll come out of this. As I say, this may be my last video for a while. The footage that you're seeing is stuff that's been taken over the last year, and I'm just like you at the minute. I've come out to just record this last bit of video in a woodland that's local to me, so I've just had to walk here and I've not seen anybody else. So this may be the last thing that I do for a while, but I will keep in touch on social media and let you know what's happening. Interestingly, if any of you do want to post some of your images, if you go onto Facebook, there's something called the Scott Tilley Photography group. It's a group, I think there's about 300 people on there now. It's a non-judgmental sort of type of forum. What I didn't want to do was create a forum where you've got, you know, elite photographers on there who critique other people's images. Basically, if you want critique, you can have it, but I've basically said to people that if you're going to give critique, then do it in the right way. You know, we all learn at different rates, and, you know, we all started somewhere. You know, some people, well, I'd explain it like this. You know, anybody who knows me will know I've done triathlon for a number of years, and with anything, and specifically with triathlon, you'll find that some people are good at the swim and they're not so good at the bike or the run. Some people are good at the bike, which is myself. I class myself as a cyclist rather than anything else, and I sort of bumble around on the other two disciplines. Then you get people who are good at all three, and you know, that is just the way it is. And it's a bit like that with photography. You know, some of us are good at some types of photography, some learn faster than others, some it takes longer. So I wanted the forum to be just somewhere where, you know, if you just want to walk in the park and take snaps of images of things that you've seen during the day, that's fine. You know, put them up there, and you know, we'll see stuff about your life and what you're doing and the stuff in your area. But I'm equally happy for people, you know, we have got some really good photographers on there as well. I mean, there's a bird photographer recently joined, and yeah, his images make me jealous. So yeah, it's one of those things where I'm quite happy. You know, I just don't want it to be one of these things where, you know, people get upset and you know, people are saying things about other people's images. It's just the joy of photography, really. That's all I wanted it to be, where we can all stick images up there and, yeah, you know, put a thumbs up if we like them, or just say nothing if we don't. And yeah, that's available for everybody. So if you want to join that, just nip across to Facebook and look that up. If you've not subscribed to this channel yet, I'd be really grateful if you would subscribe. As I say, there's going to be more wildlife videos to come. There will also be more landscape videos. That's my two passions, really, and you know, I don't claim to be an expert at either of them, but any information that I've got, I'll try and pass on to you. Anyway, that's me done. I hope to see you soon. If not, stay safe, everybody, and be sensible. And I think the more of staying safe and being sensible we do, the quicker this will be over and we can all get back to normal. So I hope to see you soon.